Hello, this is Christian D. Evans with Journey with Christian D. Evans podcast. Thank you so much for joining in. And guys, we have a very special guest to be sharing with you. It took us for quite a few weeks to get everything all situated, and just very excited. So I want to share with you, many of us already know that the real estate is all over the place, right? Some are up, some are down, and some people are asking, are there any good deals? Should we buy? Should you invest, right? And there's, should you do mortgage? Should you go into a mortgage process? Should you go find foreclosures? Whatever it may be. And so I wanted to bring an expert at the subject here in Cincinnati, Ohio. And so Anthony Pierre, and I just want to share with you his story real quick. And he's going to dive into this, but life was turned upside down when he was suddenly arrested and sent to prison for 6 years. While in prison, he searched deep within himself to understand who he really was in the midst of his crisis, found his love for writing that was lost in his childhood. Anthony loves writing poetry, motivational articles, and real estate investing publications. Anthony is a successful real estate investor with more than 23 years in the business. He also owns Estate Masters Real Estate Academy and several other businesses. While in prison, Anthony taught hundreds upon hundreds of students in his real estate investing secrets and created one of the most successful real estate investment programs in the state of Ohio prison system through Urbana University. Anthony was born and raised in Cincinnati, Ohio, where he currently lives with his 4 children. Boundless Success is his first book, and this is what we're going to be talking about a little bit as well. So very excited to be having a conversation with you, Anthony. Thank you so much for joining, and welcome.
Man, thank you, Chris, man, for having me, man. It's such a pleasure to be here, man. One of my Ohio wins, right in the same state, man. Nice.
Exactly. Well, hey, man, I'm really excited because, I just think it's a really cool story to see. You were doing, I think you said before, you had about $2 million net worth, and then all of a sudden in prison. And then, so tell me a little bit more about that story, if you will.
Well, yeah, back in, I started investing in real estate back in like 1998, 99 is when I kind of got into the business. Right out of college, I entered into the mortgage industry because that was my ticket to start understanding real estate. So I got, the pleasure of being able to understand the money before I actually started buying houses, which I think gave me an advantage and also allowed me to be able to see different ways that I can get into the industry. And then, of course, like anyone, I started to, get mentors and things like that to help kind of what I like to call remove the black spots. And what the black spots are is that we all have limited knowledge on certain topics, but in order for to make us move, we have these black spots where we just can't connect. Well, how do you move from here to here? And then how do they do this to that? Or I understand this, but I don't understand this. So I was able to, pull some people in my life that was very influential and got one of my first mentors and really that impacted and changed my life and really gave me those pieces to the puzzle that allowed me to go out. And when I started out, my first building I ever bought was a 10-unit building, had no clue what I was doing. But I got started because of my mentor and because the one thing that he told me, which is one of the valuable lessons that I can share with your audiences, is that he pointed out to me is that you're not a real estate investor until you say you're a real estate investor. So it's not about you having a house or owning any houses. It's about you desiring to do it and actually willing to put yourself out there as an investor, because you can't get leads, you can't get anything unless you actually claim it, right? So that was one of the most valuable lessons that I had. So being young and not really, having much experience with it, I took his advice. So I went out and started telling everybody I was a real estate investor. And even though I was doing successful in the mortgage industry, I became vice president of a company called Ace Mortgage Company. And we became the first minority-owned mortgage lender in Cincinnati, in the tri-state, was one of the first minority lenders. So that was one of our accomplishments. But my desire always wanted to get into real estate. So when he kind of gave me that key, I just started telling everybody that I was a real estate investor. And some people was like, yeah, whatever. And then, some people was like, okay, all right, what if I find something, I'll let you know. And then just lo and behold, someone contacted me. One of the most least unlikely people that I ever thought would contact me about a piece of property, ended up contacting a gentleman. He was a realtor named Rob. We had got into an altercation, maybe several months back over a deal that actually went extremely well, but he was putting a lot of pressure on our company. Like, it got to close on this day. It better close. And if it doesn't close, I'm never going to use you, So it was just one of those situations where he was just one of those overzealous realtors. But anyhow, with that being said, it all went well. Afterwards, afterwards at the thing, he ended up apologizing to me and saying, man, you guys, your company is pretty great. You guys did an amazing job because we beat the expectation, but we never give any guarantees. And I think he wanted us to give him guarantees, and that's what he was getting mad about. But anyhow, he ended up coming back 7 months, man, and brought me my first deal simply because I told him I was a real estate investor and I'm always looking. So he brought me 2 houses. One was a house that was owned by a famous Reds player, which you may remember him, Jose Rio. And the other one was a house that was owned by just a regular investor, a executive at GE, and he just owned a lot of real estate. And he had one that he had ran down and just was a slumlord and just didn't do nothing with it, and it just became vacant, and he was ready to move on it. So I looked at both, decided to purchase the one that was the 10 unit. And the only reason why I purchased that one is because he gave me some clues about the seller. He says, look, the seller, he's got plenty of money. He just doesn't have time. He doesn't want to deal with the house. He says, but I think he would be willing to actually, if he found the right person, give him the money to even fix it up as well. He said, because right now, I'm going to tell you a secret. He's about to put it on auction for like 10 or 20,000 just to kind of get rid of it. So I was like, okay, great. That's great information. So he set a meeting up with the gentleman. I met the gentleman. We talked, and I walked through this house, and everything was falling apart. I didn't know anything. I just had a notepad, and I just took tons of notes, and I was just saying, yeah, I just kept shaking my head. Okay. Galvanized pipe. Oh, okay, great. This is pipe busted here. Okay. And I'm just taking these notes. And then afterwards, I just told him, okay, well, let me get back to you. I'm going to put some numbers together and I get back with you. Well, I had no clue about contracting. I had no clue about anything, right? So I'm running around trying to get family and friends, say, hey, I need somebody to look at this house. Tell me what it's going to cost to fix it up. Well, we had a family contractor, a close family friend, a contractor who came and looked at it. And he was like, man, this house is going to cost like $200,000 to get this house together. And I'm like, what? He was like, yeah, man, you might not want to, do this house. So I was like, okay. I says, but you know what? Let me go check it out for myself. So I went and got my education at Home Depot and stayed there for like 2 days and took all the measurements and went through and got what it would cost to fix everything that I knew that had to be fixed material wise. And when I came up with my material list, I was somewhere right around about $17,000, $18,000 for all the materials estimated. So I put another, few thousand on there. And I says, okay, well, I'm at about 20 something thousand with material to get this place up. So now let me find a contractor that'll do it for, a decent labor, right? Yeah. So again, because I told my younger brother that I was a real estate investor, he called me out of nowhere and said, hey, bro, I got a guy that's a contractor, man. He's looking for some work. I don't know if you bought anything yet. And I'm like, nope, but perfect timing. So this contractor come to my office, showed me all his pictures. He was hungry. And I'm like, man, I got the perfect project for you. And that's kind of what merged. And then I end up getting back with that seller and the deal. The first thing that I learned in real estate is that, and I always teach it in my class, is that the most powerful thing that you have at your disposal as a real estate investor is terms. And what I mean by that is that right now, Chris, I'll buy anything you want me to buy from you as long as I can buy them on my terms. So the most powerful thing I possess is my terms. And give you an example of that is that you can say, I'm going to sell you some of your house for $1 million. I says, okay, well, great. I'll give you $1 million for your house, but you won't get a payment for 5 years. And I'm going to do X, Y, Z and X, Y, Z. So terms are extremely powerful. And that's one of the first things that I learned from one of my mentors. So I understood the power of terms. So I went and put together my terms and I understood contracts and stuff like that because I've been in the mortgage industry. So I put this deal together and the overall deal, to make a long story short, is that I offered him $50,000 for the house. I said, I'll give you $40,000 for the house. I told him that I needed $50,000 to fix it up, plus an extra $5,000 emergency fund. I told him that he would not get a payment for 1 full year and that he needed to hold all the insurance and all that. And I just pay for the day-to-day maintenance, like electric and stuff like that while we're working on a property. And then I needed it to be on a 3-year land contract. So he wouldn't get a payment for the first year. And I had 3 years to get him out the deal. And, and a few other little knick-knack things in there. And, the beautiful thing about it is that I understood one thing that has always helped me in my investment career is that I understood the money. And I understand that money has no real value unless it's actually being spent or being, invested. That's the only value money has. Right now, if you got $1 million in your bank account, you should be afraid because it really has no value in there. Value comes in the asset and what you have, because if money, the dollar crashed, which we know the dollar has been going down, it's so down 50%, so over the last, I think 10 or 15 years or whatever it is. So with it being down and just going this way, anybody investing in a dollar would probably get their money out if they really knew that the dollar is doing this, right? So what's the most powerful thing you can have? That picture behind you will be more valuable than your dollar bill. You know what I'm saying? Because I like that picture. So I'll be willing to pay whatever I want for that picture. So an asset is way more valuable. So I realized that. And I also knew that he had a lot of money, and I knew that he understood that. So when I put this deal together, I knew that he was about to give it away for like 20,000 just to get rid of it. But he was willing to actually give somebody the money because he understood money. I'll give somebody $50,000 because I can get 8% on my money by giving it to him while he fixed this up. And then if he screw it up, I can take this building back. I had it for 20 plus years anyway. I'll just take it right back. I got the money to take it back. And he did all the sweat labor and fixed it up. So me understanding all those things with full confidence, I sent him the deal, and I gave him way more than $20,000 or what he want. I gave him double it. I gave him 40,000.
So he was a motivated seller in that situation. So I'm curious, was it a lot, the deal worked out that way just because he was very motivated and it was just like that relationship that you built? Because that's a very, very good deal, actually, definitely knowing real estate a little bit. But I'm just curious because sometimes you have to know the story behind that investor as well and understand, well, he just doesn't want to mess with it and fool with it. And then being able to offer those terms. I'm just intrigued, how did that work exactly? Was it a lot of convincing or negotiation, or did it really
it was not a lot of convincing. It was just a little intel, a little information in terms of what he was thinking. And then it was me putting together the terms that I felt was a win-win for both of us. And that was what was important. I didn't know if he was going to accept the contract, but I knew I had a really good chance because he was already thinking the idea that he would eventually be willing to do that and maybe put the money up. And for the life of me, I had to really meditate on it and think about it. And I had that aha moment. Like, the reason why he wanted to give the money is because he would rather keep skin in the game and stay in the game and get interest and get way more money. So if he can get money for the purchase of it, also get money on the interest that he lend, because we know lending is the $1 billion business. That's why everybody lends, because there's so much power in interest, right? That's how everybody grows their money. So lending is the most powerful thing. So people want to lend money, whether it's privately or whether it's through banking and lending institutions, because we couldn't build businesses or anything without money being lent, right? Yeah. So I knew that, and I had got that wisdom by being in the banking industry for those years and just understanding, the intricate workings and just dealing on a high level with that. Yeah. So when I put that deal together, I didn't know if he was going to take it, but I felt pretty good about it. And when I sent it over to him, I was shocked when Rob called me and said, "Hey, he accepted all your terms." I was like, wow. And then, and then the crazy thing, I got my first check. I'm like 20 some years old, man. I got my first check for like $15,000, man. And
that's addicting.
I was shocked. Like, I'm like, young, a full check for $15,000. I'm like, man, let's get this house going. I was so excited about it. And then what I ended up doing he ended up having the $50,000. So what I did, I was able to get that house done for less than $50,000. I ended up getting it done for maybe 38, 39. So the other 10 or 15,000, I think the other 15,000, I put like 5 in my pocket. And then I also get the other 10, I used it at another house, which is a 4-family that I bought on a lease option from another mentor investor who really, I learned a lot. She was a young lady. Her name was Diane. She owned like 50 single families, and she was using a technique through VA foreclosures, and that was her niche. Expertise. And she was killing the market with that, man. And she would just use lease options because at that time, we were more in a buyer's market at that time. So she was just using lease options and just killing the game, man. And I learned a lot from her, but she ended up stumbling up and getting a 4-unit, and she hated multifamilies. She really only liked, single family. So she was like, I don't want to deal with this single family. Anybody who might want it? And I was like, yes, absolutely me. So that was my next deal, man. And just to make a long story short, I ended up getting that 4-unit from her for what she owed on it. I ended up taking over the payments on it. She ended up giving me half on $850 to actually fix up the unit. It was like $1,600 to turn a unit. She gave me half of the money. I fixed it up. And then she gave
because
me,
she just totally wanted to get out of it. So
she
she was
just,
willing to,
yeah,
oh,
she was willing
wow.
to do
Okay.
whatever. She was ready to get out of it.
Did you use a lease option, or did you use like a subject to, or did you just
No,
assume the loan? I'm curious. What was
the
that?
first deal on the 10 unit, I did a land contract.
Okay.
And then on
And then
the
this
lease,
new unit,
I
this
did a
new.
lease option.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Because the difference between the two is that the land contract gives you as the buyer more power, because it's similar to like a foreclosure. So the seller,
You own
can't
the
just
deed,
wig
right?
out. Yeah, I'm holding it, really the deed, and I'm controlling it. So he can't just wiggle out and evict you. Whereas the lease option, if you don't keep that, they can technically evict you and take if you breach that contract.
Yeah. Okay.
So she wanted a lease option. I tried to get her to do a land contract, but she was like, "No, I'm gonna do a lease option." So anyhow, with that
Well,
being
so
said,
now I'm curious, what percentage of your deals are creative financing compared to just full, mortgage? Because majority of people out there, they just think that that's the only avenue. And what I'm realizing is definitely talking to you, having a conversation with yourself, the first two deals were creative financing. So I'm just curious what
yeah.
majority of your deals are.
Well, at that particular time, my first two deals were creative financing because they were just opportunities that a lot of people were passing on, but I ended up taking it because I felt like I didn't have nothing to lose. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what the
You're willing
worst
to do
thing
the
that can
work.
happen? Yeah, I'm willing to do the work, and the worst thing that can happen is that it does not work out. But at least you're going to gain a lot of wisdom and a lot of experience. So that's kind of how I always looked at things. So I was always gun ho, and then also me, man, being an athlete, playing college football and just being competitive and just kind of having that already built in my DNA. You coming out like 9 to 20 years old and, I didn't make it to the NFL. I'm like, I got to make some money some other type of way. And that's kind of how my mind was, so, and I love real estate ever since I was a little kid, ever since we rehabbed and did our own house with my father. So that was something I always wanted to get into, just didn't know how. So when I seen those creative opportunities and I saw and I learned from one of my mentors, the power of terms, the power of creativity, the power of expressing yourself, creatively on deals, it was like the world opened up to me. It became sky's the limit. So to answer your question is that a lot of my deals, most of my deals are creative in some type of way because it's just the best way to do it. It gives you less risk. It actually puts some of the risks on the other party as well. And then that way it kind of instead of you going in with all your own money, going in with everything, and then it goes bad, then you lose everything. Whereas if everybody got something to win and everybody got something to lose, then it's great to put deals with like-minded people together and make it happen. So creativity is really how I do a lot of my deals. I'd like to do them creatively. Plus I teach. So I like to use them as teaching points and bring people into deals and people that's trying to get into the industry and stuff like that, because I know how hard it was for me to get in the industry. So therefore, I'm just creative. So you can't bring me something and I'm not going to sit there and try to figure out how we can make it happen, because that's just naturally what I do, because it's always a way if they're willing to accept your terms. So that's the most powerful thing.
So what would you say, like obviously someone that's, not just starting real estate, but they've been in the real estate game. They understand the lingo, because that's kind of who we're talking to. They understand the lingo. We're not like, what's real estate? Like, they understand it. They understand how to do it. They understand what we're talking about regarding creative financing. But like regarding, the way you developed it. I mean, you were young. These are some pretty big deals. I mean, some pretty good cash flow. What did you do? I mean, obviously you had a network of mentors, but how did you get into those deals and know enough about creative financing on the front end to be able to feel confident coming in? Or were you just so like, I have no idea what the heck I'm doing. I'm just going to take action and we'll just figure it out from there?
Well, like I said, my biggest thing was mentors, man. I think one of my best investments, man, was early on. And
how did you find those mentors?
Well, one of my first, I don't know if you heard of him, but my first mentor was Diane. I met her through doing deals. Now that was my first mentor that I really got to look at, because she was doing deals with us. That's the one that had the 50. So I started asking her a lot of different questions. And then I saw her creatively using lease options and stuff like that to do her deals. So that was like one hint. And then two, I was creatively putting these deals together finance-wise to help them in a market that at that time, the interest rates were like 8-9%. And you had the subprime market was booming at that time. So it was just like a lot of, things going on, and creativity was really the best way to do deals at that time, because the rates wasn't super low like they are right now. So a lot of people were doing creative things, doing seller holdbacks, subject twos. I mean, all that stuff was super popular at that time because of the market that we were in. So I understood a lot of those deals because I would have a lot of deals come across my desk. And I would see how they would put these deals together, and I'd be like, "Oh, okay, that was nice. Oh, okay, that was sweet. Oh, I like that."
So right now, what would you say? I mean, for someone that's getting into the real estate, or they've been in the real estate for a little while, obviously, I think I was listening to a podcast the other day. About 46% of mortgages are actually approved. So majority of them are not being approved right now. However, though, it's a buyer's market right now. A seller's market. And so my question to you, Anthony, is, all these strategies. What is the most effective during this period of time? Because obviously we do know that pre-foreclosures and foreclosures are going to be coming down the way. There's certain things that are coming down in the future here, but what strategy is the best right now to really articulate those skills?
I think the best strategy that you can use right now is partners, because to not over leverage yourself. Like one thing that I mentioned earlier is that the most difficult thing is to find deals. So if you actually put your energy on and your resources on finding great deals, the money is going to follow. So therefore, now you actually minimize your risk, and now you can get the money that you need. There's tons of investors out here that's trying to make their money make money. And we know that the government been spending so much money out, sending money out and spending money. So people know inflation is ridiculous. So that we have to do something with our money in order to beat inflation coming up. So anybody that know anything about money knows that, but they need somebody that they can trust that's actually, serious, and that's willing to put together deals that not only protect them, but also would allow them to be able to grow. And then they'll keep reinvesting. And that's the thing. So now once you get that one person that's willing to actually trust in it because you find this killer deal, now that's your ticket in. And now you can literally get in a deal with no money out of your pocket or anything, because the most powerful thing is the deal. It's just like right now, if I bought you the next Facebook, and you can see that, right? You're going to be like, I don't care how much money. What do you need? Like, give me the money. I did all the hard work, right? I built the infrastructure. Here's what we're doing. So it's not the money. And that's why I always teach my students, like, quit worrying about the money. Learn.
Well, when you, yeah, 100%. And so I'm curious, when you're saying a great deal, what does, because I've realized that some people, when I'm talking to some, numerous real estate agents, they have certain rules that property has to follow. Maybe it has to cash flow 250, or maybe the pricing, maybe there's no equity, or whatever it may be, whatever makes a good deal. And I'm just curious, to you, when you're looking at a property and analyzing it and assessing it, what are certain rules that you have that say, okay, you know what? It needs to follow this, and after 50% of expense. I'm just curious, what allows you to say, okay, this is a good deal for you or not?
One of my rules that I use, I call it the 50-50-70 rule. And basically the 50-50-70 rule, which I do teach it in a webinar too, that I'll give you the link for they can go check it out. But the 50-50-70 rule, what that is that I never purchase a property for more than 50 cents on the dollar. So I'm only going to purchase it for 50 cents on the dollar of the ARV. So all houses that I look for it to be 50 cents on the dollar, or 50% of the ARV or less. So those are the deals that I'm looking for. The other thing is that I don't do a deal, especially on a flip, for less than $50,000. So that a profit margin. So that's on a flip. So $50,000. So I won't even touch a deal if the margins are not 50,000 or more. So that's the other rule that I use. And then the 70 rule is 70% of the after repair value, and 70% of the cost to renovate it, of the after repair value. So I want to make sure that the actual purchase price and everything fits in that 70%, minus the repairs. And if it sits in that 70% or less, then I know that it's a pretty good deal. So like, for example, if I was going to purchase a house right now, let's say I purchased a house for $100,000, right? And let's say the ARV was 200,000, right? And let's say that the actual renovation cost on that was $30,000. Well, the 100,000 and 30,000 cannot be more than 70% of the after repair value. Okay, so 70% of the after repair value on 200,000 is 140,000. So it would meet confirmation. So that would be a good deal to me, right? And then also, if I was to close it out, the actual profit margin on that 130 minus 200 is $70,000, right? So then now there go another confirmation. So it's 50 cents on the dollar because I got it for 100,000. It was the ARV is 200,000. That's one check. It was only 50%. It gives over $50,000 because we see that it's got a profit margin of 70,000. So that's another check. And then the 130 meets the 70 rule, which is less than 70% of the after repair value, that renovation and what you purchased it for. So does that make sense?
Yeah,
so
that makes perfect sense.
So that's one of the things that I use for that. And then when I get into commercial properties and things like that, is usually 1%. It got to be 1% of the 1% of the purchase price.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, right.
So I'm curious, so then with your exit strategy, how do you identify your exit strategy? Is it always flip, or is it wholesale, or is it kind of like do you want to buy and hold and just rent it out, whether it's Airbnb or rental?
Well, I think that for each his own. A lot of people, you'll hear a lot of real estate gurus that kind of have their, what they think, is best. Some people are really big on buy and holds right now. Buy and holds are really big. So a lot of people are putting together, major deals and doing a lot of buy and holds and stuff like that in partnerships, which is great. You can kind of do that, and that's no problem with that as well. Me personally, I like to kind of do a combination, and I really don't like to hold anything for extremely too long, simply because my company now has been going more into the educational side. So a lot of things that I'm doing now, I'm doing more so for the education. Plus, my wife, she's from Kenya. So we have some plans for missionary stuff that we want to do and travel. So I don't want to be tied too much real estate that I'm tied here in the state. So a lot of things that I'm doing is I'm kind of only keeping them for short term and getting them in and getting them out, and then reinvesting, in my business, and then things that are more automated. And then also just kind of keeping, like, I got like a 40 unit building that we're looking at right now that we're probably going to grab, and that will be something that we will hold. But just the simple investments, they got to make sense for me. But more so, I've been doing a lot of flips, and then I love wholesales. I recently just had an amazing wholesale, a high-end wholesale deal, man, if I would have did this deal, it would have been amazing. I was so hoping so I can teach my students how to do it, but some stuff was leaked on it. It was actually, are you familiar with it's a hotel in California, the Monte Carlo?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
It was a deal with the Monte Carlo. It was like $600 million. It had a $200 million profit spread in between it, and somebody leaked the information. One of my connects kind of brought it to us and said, "Hey, Anthony, can you? We need to get somebody who can actually sign off on the down payment on $400 million and can show us that they have the money in the account." So me, I didn't have the money in the account. So I'm like, I don't have that much, but I said, but I think I can make it happen for you. Let me, make some calls. So I ended up calling a couple of my people and says, "Hey, we got a deal we'll cut you in on, that if you can go ahead and show the assets." So I called one of them guys who they have plenty of money in the bank, and they was like, absolutely. So I cut them in. I think they were going to get like $12 million for doing the deal for me. And then I had another guy was going to get like, who connected all the pieces. He was going to get like 10 or 12, but our company was due like 40 something million off of this deal if we would have made it happen, man. And what ended up happening is somebody ended up leaking, and we had a group out of China that was coming over here. They was looking for it, and somebody within a circle leaked the information that had been reduced in price. we had direct access to it, and somebody on my guy team leaked it, and then they end up somehow, while we were putting everything together and where we trying to finalize everything, they found out like, oh, somebody said that right now, I just found out that you can get it for 400 million, and they were about to pay 600 million for it, which that was the original price. So I love wholesale deals. There's tons of, you got high-end wholesale deals. You got, where you can make 10 or 15 and low end, all of them are great. I think that strategy wise for anyone, you definitely want to implement all of them into your strategy. I don't think you want to just say, oh, I just wholesale. No, you want to kind of do all of it. Why? Because, first of all, in long term, you're going to make way more money, doing your flips in terms of what you're making with your wholesale, because wholesale can kind of be hot and cold, because you constantly need these leads to turn over. Unless you're doing your own lead generation and you actually got a company that's bringing in and pumping them to you, then it becomes very difficult to do 40, 50, 100, 200 flips every year. You're going to have some extremely bad years, because I know from other people who went out of business when they were doing 170 flips, and then now, they can barely find 20 for the year, right? So
right.
But
that makes perfect sense. Okay.
Yeah, but far as for flips, one of the keys that I use in order to continue to keep flips is that I do distressed properties. I always look for distressed properties, and I always look for what don't nobody else want to do. And then that was simply because of what I learned when I did my first deal. Nobody wanted to do that. And everybody said, oh, it's going to be this, it's going to be that, it's going to be 200,000, it's going to be this to fix it up. And usually people are just talking, and usually professionals are just afraid to do it because they think in their mind it's too much work. So they'll just quote you like, oh, $70,000 to fix that foundation. I ain't dealing with that, right? So they may not have the expertise, the understanding, whatever to do it. So what I have found is that you have people out here that are extremely good at what they do and extremely creative as well. So if you can find those people and add them on your team, what happens is it opens up a ton of deals and leads. So I have no problem getting deals and leads. I got them coming in every day. I've looked at 3 or 4 this week. So while everybody else is saying, oh, it's a seller's market, there's nothing out there, that's really not true. It's just about how you built your company and then what you're focusing on. I don't mind doing an extremely difficult renovation, because that's where you get the big profit margins. And that's why my average profit margins are over $100,000, simply because of the type of deals that I like to do. And I'm willing to go in, and if it takes 90 days or 120 days, don't matter to me. Let's get it done and let's make it happen.
That makes perfect sense, man. I really appreciate you sharing that, because what I always find so interesting is that we talk about these overall, generic things, and then not being able to actually dive into the deals and the offers, and like you said, and really identifying which strategies are the best during this time, because obviously the market is kind of crazy, and like I mentioned, there are certain things that are happening in the government right now that it's going to be interesting to see what happens, whether it be 2 years, 3 years, 4 years down the road. Now, let's kind of pivot a little bit, okay? Because I like to kind of pull back. I know we talked a little bit about deals and real estate and actually showing your knowledge, which is awesome. But I'd like to ask you a little bit about kind of your situation with, prison, how you got there, how you got out, what did you learn from it? And obviously how you're able to bounce from prison to, to where you're at now and being able to run several 6-7 figure businesses.
Well, that's a great question, man. One of the things that happened with me, man, is that I think that I would like to say that I'm a victim of, and maybe some people out here are victims of this as well, is I was a victim of just bad association, man. Being with the wrong people. One of my favorite scriptures in the Bible is bad association spoils useful habits. And that was one of the first things that I learned when I was sitting in the cell looking at 22 years. I'm like, man, I don't put myself in this predicament. And it was usually, especially when you have money or you have resources, or you think like, hey, I'm here, you think that you can overcome those things, like, oh, that won't be this, and this is that. But when there's politics start to be behind it, when people start looking, hey, I end up doing a favor for a really close friend of mine's, interesting story. I'll share this real quick because we have history since we was kids. When I was young, me and him just would skip class a lot. We'd do a lot of little bad things together. And one time, and this is what really changed my trajectory in life, and changed my mindset. One time we got caught. Teacher had us in separate rooms, and the teacher came in the room. She just clocked on me. You this, that, you're a horrible kid, you're not gonna be anything, this, that. And then she went in and talked to the other kid, and I can hear her. And she was like, you got, a bright future in life. You got this going for you. You're extremely smart. He has no future in there. And I'm like, what does she mean I have no future? I'm listening like, as a kid, right? I'm like, I'm not even in the 5th or 6th grade yet. I might be in the 5th grade or something like that. Man, I'm young. So that right there pissed me off. And the long story short, I ended up purposely, getting straight A's from that point on. And then on the day of the awards, I skipped and went and skipped school and went and did some other things that didn't even show up for the awards. So in my mind, it was just like proving a point, but it was good to hear that because that actually challenged me. And I actually realized that I had something in me that wasn't there. So now let's fast forward to now. The gentleman never really got into, business. I ended up going off to college. I went to junior college. I ended up graduating from Western Illinois University, and and then it came out and got into real estate. Like I told you, those first 2 deals. Just to conclude that, I end up making $50,000 on those deals. I refinanced that house. I bought it. Like I said, I only owed them like 100. Ended up appraising for 185. Went to the bank, got 80%. Pulled $50,000 out of that house, the 4-unit. I pulled another $48,000 out of that house on a refinance after I fixed it up. So I had over $100,000 in less than a year. My first year investing in real estate to work with. I ended up buying 17 houses in 6 months and ended up putting another additional $420,000 in my pocket and ended up building a small real estate empire of $2.2 million before I was even 26, 28, something like that. So that had done. So I built that and was doing that. So I really wanted to always reach back and try to grab my boys like, man, and I came from an environment where, yes, you got family members that's smoking weed, that's selling drugs. And we kind of are brought up in these environments. And I don't know if you had to deal with this, but I have. I mean, I'm just around it and you're just around it. And it's normal. It's not like you're going to tell your real good friend, like, hey, man, don't nobody want to be on a block talking about, you got to stop selling drugs and make money. I'm not, like that. It's like you doing you, I'm doing me. But at the same time, it's still love there. And I want the best for you. And I know that the best for you is to eventually find a way out. Right. So I will always be willing to reach back in. And that's what it was. That's what a bad association. I started helping my really close friends. We call ourselves cousins, get some real estate. I helped him get his first really nice house out in a very nice area. Started doing these things that help him. And what ended up happening is that he ended up owing me some money, which was fine. And he wanted me to do something for him to help him so that not only he could kind of overcome an issue he was having, but also be able to pay me what he owed me. For 5 days, I told him, nah, I'm cool. I owned I had a house down in a high rise down in Chicago, beautiful high rise that at this time I was actually renting out. And it overlooked the whole Navy Pier, beautiful, down there on Clark Street in Chicago. And, so it was really, really nice. So I would have to go down. I would always go down there every month just to go down there and hang out in Chicago. And then I would meet, with, one of the guys who was renting there and, just pick up my rent and just kind of hang out, shop. We would do that. So I was going to be going down there and he knew that. And he says, hey, man, can you do me a favor? And he wanted me to, pick up some stuff for him, and help him out. He didn't trust anybody else. So for 5 days, I told him no. Finally, he just kind of talked numbers with me and like, man, if I can do this, I'll be able to gift you this. And then now my mind shipped to the money and this little $30,000 that he owed me. I said, okay, well, cool. In my mind, I'm thinking I'm suited and booted. Who's going to stop me? I don't mess with real estate. I'm not in this world. So I go and I decide to do it. And I do it. I get through Chicago on my way back into Ohio. Didn't know that he was being investigated, that they had an illegal wiretap listening to him. They end up, knowing where I was, end up stopping me. And there you go. I end up getting caught. And you do not want to see my picture when they took it, down at the county, because I looked at crazy, thinking now that I am arrested and I'm looking at 22 years in prison. I was sick, man. And then, so that was like the first time where I really was stopped. And then I couldn't do anything. Like I could be creative in real estate. I can make something happen, and get out of a situation or get out of a bad deal or turn a bad deal into a good deal. But this, I couldn't do anything, man. And I was sitting there and then I started seeing how they started to change the narrative. Oh, he's the one with the money. Maybe he's the one. Maybe he's the launderer. Maybe he's this. And then I started seeing them go after my assets, and I started seeing them taking things that really had nothing to do. I had just closed on and did a flip for 70 grand and just made money and just bought a brand new Audi that was, you know what I'm saying, that was legit.
Just took everything.
Took it. Yeah. So that was my first real lesson, man, in life, man, and really humbled me. And then at that time, I had 4 children, man. I had my daughter was 16, my oldest son was 10, and my next in line son, he was 8. And then my youngest daughter was 2. So right there, man, it was just, and then I have been an entrepreneur since I really got out of school, right? So I was the dad that always went on the trips. I was the one that was always there. I love to go on the field trips. I love to be at the recitals. I love to be at anything that they had going on. I was there. Sometimes I'd be the only male, and but they loved it. The kids literally come to me when they had trips. They didn't go to their mom. They came to dad because they knew dad would be available. So with all that being said, man, I was crushed, man. And at that moment, that's when I really started to question my whole life in general. And I really started to get into like a deep depression and just looking at my life and just, thinking like, man, my life is just over, man. I'm looking at 22 years. I just ruined everything. I felt selfish because my actions was so selfish. I went from trying to make this little 30 grand that somebody owed me to making $20, a month, in prison. I went from a company that was grossing over 40,000 a month to 20 grand. I mean, $20 a month. So these things were just rolling my head. And then I watched my company just unravel, because at that time too, I did a lot of things myself. Because I just was kind of free spirit like that. So I did a lot of things. I had a lot of energy. So I did a lot of things. I didn't have a whole lot of employees. A lot of people were 1099. A lot of people wasn't really associated with the core. And, and at that time, so when things started to go bad, I didn't have the right people around me. I ended up having the right people, but I didn't think of them. But at that time, I couldn't think of the right person that could have helped me kind of keep things in order. It was too late afterwards. So, I started losing everything, and I just kind of sat back. And then I got this kind of attitude, like, forget it. Like, I don't even care. You know what I mean? Like, they can have it. I don't even care about none of that. Like, because you start realizing that I just want to some kind of way get out of this situation, but it just seemed dim, man. So one of the things that really helped me, man, is I started really evaluating my life. I started looking at my life more from a spiritual standpoint, man. And that's where I started to deconstruct myself, break myself down to nothing, to humble myself and just realize, like, you don't know it all. You don't know anything. You know what I'm saying? And you really need to sit back and look at what did you do and how did you put yourself in this situation so this never happens again. And that's where I kind of realized that I was missing this moral foundation that really alerts you in your mind, almost like a compass that's telling you what's right and wrong, because we do have these blurred lines with our family and friends where we may associate and be in situations that if we were caught what we were doing at that moment or where we were at, that we could potentially get in some trouble. And that was the thing that I had to realize, that, okay, I have to have a strong conviction in terms of what's right and what's wrong. And then I will never step over these lines. And then anybody that I deal with going forward, you're going to have to go on my terms. I'm never going to lower myself to go on your terms because of high integrity and looking at your life from a different perspective, and then removing anything that may be vile or that may be bad from me. So that way, I don't even put myself in a predicament. Right. So that was kind of that moment. And that was building the ideal of the book. And I started challenging the word failure. And one of the things that I noticed in the Bible is that the word failure was never used by God. So in my mind, I'm thinking like, well, if God doesn't never even use the word failure, why do we even use that word? So that's where I kind of came up with the title, There's No Such Thing as Failure. I started shifting my mindset, and I had to do that, man, for my own mental health, because, going in prison, one or two things can happen. Either you're going to come out better and a better person, or you're going to come out a worse person. There is no in between. You're never going to come out who you was when you went in. So you got a choice when you go in, how you're going to build yourself up. So that's what I end up doing, man. I started first with the foundation spiritually, man, and really started challenging myself, man. And I ended up becoming, getting baptized, becoming an ordained minister. I became one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and just really started looking at life, from a more spiritual perspective. And then, when the opportunity came to start teaching real estate, I had a different view on it. I was no longer this gung-ho, you got to make millions of dollars, you got to, like the rest of the world, go, 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 go. I was more or less like, when my bunkie asks me and says, man, I've been seeing, I used to see your commercials, I used to see this, and I heard everything that you've done, and I really want to learn how to invest in real estate. I had to sit back because I didn't want the old me to teach him. I wanted the new me to teach him real estate. So I had to really think about, like, what would this new me teaching real estate? How would I teach it? So after, strong thought about it, I realized that, okay, I'm going to have to inject, values, morals, and I'm going to have to show who I am now. And I'm going to have to use to teach them from where I was and why that wasn't right to where I am now, and why this is the best way to approach business, whether it's real estate, life, family, no matter. And that's kind of where the foundation started to be laid. And then with my bunkie, when he asked, me to do this, I said, look, I'll teach you real estate on the one condition. And he says, okay, what's that? I said, I want you to take all the notes, and then I want you to go to the auto school. And when you get a chance, get on the computer and type everything up, because I don't want to have to keep doing it just in case if it's somebody else that wants to learn. Once I teach it through you, we got it typed up, and all we got to do is add or whatever. And he was like, absolutely, because I didn't have access to computers at the time. He was able to go outside the prison to auto school, and he had access to computers every day. So he did it, man. I sat down and taught him real estate for 8 months. I taught him an hour once a week for 8 months. We sat down. I laid the format for a program that I started teaching, which was called 4 Phases to Becoming a Successful Real Estate Investor. And the phases that I taught was the first, which was entirely important to me, is understanding the money. That was phase 1. Phase 2 is real estate investment strategies. And that's when we dig deep into all the creative strategies and everything that, they needed to learn. And then phase 3 was personal credit and business credit, the power of personal credit and business credit, and how you leverage your personal credit to establish a business and credit, and how that will look, where you'll be able to get lines of credits and things like that you can utilize down the line. Even though the power of being able to do deals with no money, now it becomes even more powerful, because now you know that you can do a deal with no money. But wow, if you got a line of credit of $5 million, that's pretty dope, right? So that was the thing that I started teaching them about, the power of credit and how to use it. And then lastly, I taught them about establishing their businesses. And that was in phase 4, establishing your business and utilizing free money, which was grants and things like that. So that was what I taught them in phase 4. And it just became this amazingly ridiculous thing, man. And it just kind of blew up. I went from teaching my bunkie. From there, I taught 4 people. And then before you know it, we on the yard and we all looking at each other like, hey, and they walking around and saying, hey, what you guys doing over there? Because you really ain't supposed to have 6, 7, 8 people all around trying to learn, So, and I'm printing out these packages, and I got, secret people printing out packages for people. And I'm like, man, we got to find something better. My friend was like, man, I want to introduce you to the principal, man. He was like, go talk with the principal and see if she has a classroom space. He's like, because, man, everybody wants this program. So I said, all right. I went to talk to the principal. She said, look, I don't have space here, but I'm going to introduce you to the director of education through Urbana University. And I want you to talk with her and see if she could bring the program down in the college. So I met with her. She had been hearing about the program, and she loved the program, and she was like, yes, absolutely. You can have, you got a space. So we put the program together. We made it a program where they can get certifications at the end of 16 weeks. So I would do each semester, I would do 16-week course starting early in the fall, and then ending in the first of the year. And then I would go after that, and then go into close to the summertime and teach. And that was it. And I would teach it twice. Two classes per semester, and the average class size for most schools, for most classes, was 10 to 15 students. Well, my class had 35 to 50 students. I had to have them put in extra chairs, and I wasn't really allowed, but I asked her, I says, look, I'll be leaving here in a couple of years. Like, we need to get as many people that want to do it. So if we need to add another 15, 20 chairs, let's just add it. If they want to pile in here, let them pile in there. So that's what we end up doing, man. It ended up becoming this amazing thing. And that was it, man. But I learned, man, that, one of the key things, if there's anything that I really learned from this, is first and foremost, you got to look yourself in the mirror and really evaluate yourself and really see what your core values is and check your foundation, man. If your foundation is weak, man, if it's lacking, then you really need to focus there first, man, so that you can really have the right mindset moving forward when you're dealing with people, whether you're dealing with them in real estate, whether you're dealing with them in life and business. All that makes a huge difference. And sometimes we have it kind of distorted and kind of perverted in a way, right? You know what I'm saying? Some people think like, hey, man, I'll never steal for somebody, but I'll lie to you all day long, right? So it's like we have these things like, right? So that's why I say evaluate your foundation. The other thing, man, is that one thing I had to do, which was the hardest, was to forgive myself, man. Because I have 4 kids, man, and I realized with my 4 kids, man, that, you know, things weren't going to never be the same. And I had to come to grips with reality of that. And one of the things that, you know, helped me, and just not to be all religious, but spiritually, what really helped me was King David's story. Everybody knows that story. And that story really resonated with me because one of the things that I noticed in that story after he did all those things and all this stuff happened is that the one thing that he asked God for was to not take his spirit away. And keep his spirit, because he realized that the one thing he was putting in jeopardy was his relationship with God. And he knew that outside of whatever was about to happen or whatever, I needed that relationship. I wanted to keep that relationship. And that relationship is what helped him be able to get through what was to come next. And that was all the backlash from his bad decisions. So even though God forgave him, he did not excuse him that you wasn't going to have to deal with the consequences for your actions. Now your son think you know what I'm saying, is just a piece of trash because you went and, you know, cheated on his mom or whatever. So now he has to deal with all these things. And now his son tries to take his kingdom. He gets ran out of his kingdom, but he trusted in God and believed and understood that God was with him. He already forgave him. So all he had to do was endure, keep his faith, and keep pushing forward and keep building to be the man that he know that he can be. And eventually everything else would take care of itself. And it did. He was exalted. He was put back in his position. He was able to now move forward. He ended up having his son, King Solomon, and one of the wisest people to ever, you know, be on this earth. So all these blessings came after. You see what I mean? And that's what I started to look towards, like, okay, I know that things are about to be screwed up with these kids because now they're used to me being there, but now I'm gonna have to endure that. So when you know, the funny thing is when I got out and the one, you know, everything was gravy. It seemed like, oh, Dad's home, this is that. And then I had that moment when my son just literally just kind of clocked on me, like, just like, you know, bipolar, like, you know, I hate you for this and this and, you know, and I'm like, and, you know, usually you get like, man, hold up, who you talking to, right? So no, but this was a moment that I had to remember, like, this is a byproduct of my actions. So I had to take it, you know what I'm saying? And then I end up, you know what I'm saying, we both, I never cry, but I end up, you know, emotionally, man, crying. I mean, we end up hugging each other. He ended up getting it out. He needed to get that out, you know, because young man, dad left, figuring out his way. Now he's getting into things that he never would have ever saw with me being there. You know, I was the one who coached him in football. I'm the one who taught them how to shoot a basketball. I'm the one who we ran across the field, our first championship together in football. You know, I'm there. And now all of a sudden I'm gone, right? So I realized that, and that's why I was so thankful for that, Chris, because, man, I'm telling you, had I not really had that wisdom, I wouldn't have known how to deal with even my kids after coming out of prison. But I realized that I needed to just be that rock, and I needed to be mild, humble, loving, and just realizing that they're going to be struggling. So I just need to be there. I'm not going anywhere. I'm here now, and I love you. And no matter what, we're going to move forward. We're going to move forward together. And that was the biggest thing, man. So with all that being said, man, that prison experience, was it, you know what I'm saying, the most difficult period in time in my life? Absolutely. But was it an extremely rewarding and beneficial time in my life? Absolutely. Because there was so many benefits that I end up learning. I end up getting into the auto school and end up getting certification as a mechanic. I never used to use these hands for nothing. You know what I'm saying? Writing on a pen and, you know, talking and stuff like that. So, and it was funny in the auto school, funny story. I always wore gloves and they always laughed at me. I'm like, man, I'm not putting my hands in there and keep hurting my hands. But anyhow, that's a long story short. But I end up becoming a competent mechanic. I ended up getting my Water 1 and Water 2 license, which was an accomplishment for me because it has a 40% pass rating for civilians. I don't care where you're coming in. And I ended up getting both. So those were like accomplishments for me. Like, man, so that's how I was able to kind of get through it. I went through it the way that I went through college. I did 5 years in college. I told myself that I got to do 6 years in prison. So I'm going to do it from the perspective of college. Like, I'm going to take in all the wisdom, all the knowledge. I'm going to humble myself, and I'm just going to learn everything that I can learn and take it in to add it to who I am. And then I dismissed this ideal of being a failure. I realized that I was far from a failure, and that really this is nothing but a page in my book of life. So I don't care what anybody think or what they say. I'm going to continue to do me and move forward positively as a better person, moving forward. And then you'll see it through my actions and how I'm moving back. Because before I caught that case, I had never had a juvenile record, nothing. So I wasn't a kid that was getting in trouble, because after I had that moment when I was a kid, when she told me I wouldn't be anything, I kind of prided myself on trying to be the best moving forward. So throughout the rest of my junior high school, in high school, and then also even in college. So that was not my thing. I just wasn't like no troublemaker or anything like that. So really, she saved my life, so to speak. And even though this bad decision put me in prison, I didn't see my life anymore as being over, because I took that time to really meditate and really look at the facts. A lot of people get depressed and they get sad, but they don't look at the facts. Like, look at your life. Like, are you really if you got 3 beautiful children looking at you every day?
There you go.
That's the most powerful. I don't care if you got zero, negative $5,000 in your bank account right now, but you woke up and you got 3 kids that run in there and they happy to see you. You in the most beautiful place, because that thing with the money, it'll take care of itself. You might not have figured it out yet, but if you actually keep the right type of mindset, you'll work that out. But most importantly, you won't miss those moments that are just so valuable with your kids, simply because you're stressing over something that a lot of times is out of your control at the moment.
Wow. Anthony, I just really appreciate you just diving into so much. I mean, there's just so much to unpack there. And, one of the biggest things that really resonated the most is how you learned through the prison situation to find that moral, to find that ground, to find that, foundation, and then to come out here and help those that are also in that same struggling point, obviously coming out of prison. And, I know a majority of them go back into the same situation as they were that caused that prison situation. And so to be able to assist them and say, hey, you know what, there's a better path, and to, give them the foundation of morals and ethics and stuff like that, and then build a real estate empire on top of that foundation. I think we're both very spiritual guys, and realize that's what God wants you to do. And it was really awesome listening to you, and really, taking that to the next level and really seeing what God's been able to do. And like you said, that self-reflection, it's hard to look at yourself, but you got to take the trash out to be able to, allow God to use you at the highest capacity. And that's awesome. And, Anthony, I mean, obviously that was just a little bit that's in that book. And I know that you dive into a lot more with the book, but how can our audience reach out to you, invest into the book, get to know you a little bit more, and just, just be part of your organization?
Probably the easiest way, I try to make it simple. I got what you call a Linktree account, and basically on that Linktree, you can go to Linktree Pierre 1002 / and if you can type that in and click on that, it should pull up my little site, and on there you can actually purchase the book. If you want to purchase the book, you can actually join my Facebook group, which is Estate Masters Real Estate Academy, which we're giving out, jewels each and every, day, or at least a few times a week on that particular group. You also, I told you about that webinar that I told you, where it talks about the 50-50-70 rule in there. That webinar is 5 simple steps to making $50K or more on all your real estate deals. So you can jump on there and you can check out that. And then also, if you wanted to get in contact with me, I do a 45-minute free consultation where we can sit down and look at where you at in your life, and we can look at what you got going on, where you're trying to go, and then we can try to put together a plan of action to try to help you get there and try to get you clarity, and most importantly, remove the black spots, because that's really what I look for, when I'm talking with people. Where are the black spots? I know you understand this, but where is the disconnect, and then also
Definitely.
being able to move, because you got some real estate investors that's at this level, and then they're like, I want to get to this level, but I can't see how to scale up. So I'm definitely there to help in that sense too. One quick thing, man, that I wanted to mention which was really encouraging to me, that really helped me when I finally got released from prison, because you do all these things while you're in prison, and then all of a sudden the time is up and it's time for you to go home, and you're excited about it, but then you're a little nervous too, because you're like, okay, I got to go home and now I got to figure out my life, right? So I told my cousin, I says, hey, let's go check out the parole officer, the PO, first, because I just want to get that out of the way, before I do anything else. So we did that. So she took me, we went to go meet with the parole officer. I'm in there. The parole officer said, hey, you're low maintenance, you didn't really get in trouble, nothing like that. So, we're not going to really monitor you like that. You just got to check in. I think I had to do it like twice a year via email or text. Just text me and just know that we can show up at your house anytime. I'm like, okay, great. She says, but now what are you going to do with your life? How are you going to make money? And what are you planning on doing? Are you going to get a job? You're going to do this? And I says, well, and this was the funny part, because I said, well, yeah, I don't, I got these little certifications and things that I do, and I could probably do that. I says, but really, my heart, I would love to open back up my real estate business and just start investing in real estate again. And she was like, you know what? You're like the 10th person that then came in here talking about you want to invest in real estate. And she was like, and you know what? I'll be honest with you. I've been pretty impressed and amazed. And she was like, because I've never seen anybody that prepared to come out and invest in real estate. She said they were pulling out their plans. They had exactly how they was going to do it. They said in 24 months, they would have this, and this is what they plan to do. And here's where they're going to work. And I says, wow. And she's like, so she's like, I'm just surprised. I says, well, she said, no, she said, and she said they took some real estate class while they was in prison. And that's when I was like, listening, like, okay. And then she looked at him and I said, well, I think that might have been my class. And she says, oh, wow. So you the instructor. They said it was a gentleman in there teaching real estate and this, that, and blah, blah, blah. So long story short, man, when she said that to me, that was like confirmation, like, man, you can't stop. You got to keep going. Because at that moment, I was thinking like, maybe I just fade to black and just be home, take the kids, maybe go get a job in water treatment, might purchase real estate again some point in time in life, but just be normal, man, and just live that type of life. But when she said that, I was like, oh, there's no way. Boom. I have to keep pushing. I have to continue to be out here. I have to be a force for them, a lamp for them, a light, so that way they got guidance while they're out here, that they can always reach out to me and be able to continue on their journeys. And again, I got hundreds and hundreds of students that are out here doing their thing, that's extremely successful. They're doing not only flips, and they're doing commercial properties, all kind of amazing things, man. So I'm so thankful for that. And I wouldn't have had that, man. And now my life is way more fulfilling than what it was, back before I went to prison. Although in my mind, I thought I was doing pretty great. But now, this is just so much better because of, the impact and you being able to pay it forward and help other people. And then you see it. Like, I really didn't realize it. And I got a call. Here's another story. I got a call from my son, about maybe 3-4 weeks ago. Probably about a couple months ago. Let me take that back. And he said, Dad, he was like, I was at this convention the other day for at-risk youth, and they had public speakers there, and they were talking, and it was like, and there was a gentleman that was on stage talking about real estate, and he was telling people, how to invest in real estate, what he was doing, how he was doing all these things. And then he mentioned that he learned how to invest in real estate in prison. And I was like, oh, okay, nice. And he said, yeah. He says, and then Jashawn, which is my nephew, he said, Jashawn nudged me and says, he's probably talking about your daddy. And I was like, no way. He's not talking about my father, whatever. So after the event was over, my son went up to him and says, hey, what's your name? And he told him, my name is Kevin. And he says, you said you was learn how to invest in real estate. Who taught you how to invest in real estate? And he says his name was Anthony Pierre. And my son was like, that was my dad. So he took out his ID. He said he showed it to him or whatever. And he said he was super just shocked, like that, Dad, this is really was one of your students or whatever. And he was ever motivated. And what was so great about that too, is that my son then afterwards enrolled into the academy. Like all these years been around real estate, he enrolled to get in my academy and was like, Dad, I got to start. I want to get in there, you know. So for me, that's one of my proudest moments, because not only is Kevin paying it forward, but then also he even touched my son, my oldest son, to make him really realize that, hey, my dad is pretty cool. Like he doing some things. Let me go check out what he got going on and learn from him. So that, that really moved my heart, man. I was happy about that.
My gracious, man. And you're just beginning that higher level of stuff. And it's just remarkable to see this. And, Anthony, I just want to let the audience know that those links and everything like that will be in the description below. So they're going to click on it, reach out to Anthony. He obviously knows what he's talking about, definitely in this market. And obviously in the next few years when the market changes and adjusts, but also being able to build that foundation. Anthony, I just want to share with you, thank you so much for joining our Journey with Christian D. Evans podcast, being able to just share your knowledge, your wisdom, but also just your values and the foundation and that story. So thank you so much, Anthony.
Man, thank you for having me, Chris. It's been a pleasure.
Have a good one, bud. Thanks.
Yep.